What are we talking about first? What were we talking about first? Unity? Ladies first.
Good morning, Amy Spain Duncan. I am an alcoholic. Hey, thanks a lot, Kevin. He's very thoughtful. He's a very thoughtful person. So my sobriety date is March 6, 2010, and like I told you guys last night, I came all the way in and sat all the way down in this deal. And so when we talk about recovery, especially early recovery, we're first introduced through meetings. Typically, if you come through a treatment house or a program, is that what you do? Okay. And they say, go to AA. That's what they tell you. Go to AA and get a sponsor, but that's where they kind of stop with their instructions, right? And so you go to AA, and but we don't have rules. We don't have things to let you know what that means once you get here. And so workshops like this and the work of district kind of helps somebody understand about this. What did I just join? What did I just sign up for, right? Because it's more than drinking the coffee and smoking cigarettes and going to meetings. It's so much more than that, because we have lots of people who smoke cigarettes, drink coffee, and go to meetings, and we are planning their funerals, or we've already buried them, right? So we would be doing you a disservice if we let you believe that Alcoholics Anonymous was just not drinking, going to meetings, drinking coffee. Because we're so much more than that. So I love the opportunity when we get to kind of explore that and educate people. And even though there's not like a lot of people here today, you are now, when we talk about being properly armed with the facts, right? You're getting the facts, you're getting properly armed, and then you can then share that information with other people. You can use it in your own life. You can bring it back to your home groups, to the women and men that you sponsor, and hopefully that's how we carry this message. It's one alcoholic transferring information to another alcoholic. So thank you for coming. Thank you for spending this time with us. Thank you, District 13, for putting this on, because they are so important to what we do. Which one are we doing? All right, unity is concepts, right? Traditions. Okay, great. I got it. You don't have to be perfect at it. So when my experience with the traditions were, I was not concerned about those. When I first got here, I was concerned about the steps, right? Because that's where I'm going to get sober. And then, but fortunately, I was around a lot of old timers, and they weren't going to let me skip out on traditions. We started a traditions meeting at the Ice House. My dad and a guy named Tim Hyland started a traditions meeting, because what we were seeing in our local AA was this influx of sober houses, treatment centers, people that are told go to AA and get a sponsor, but when they got here they didn't know what we were about or what we were doing. And so these traditions meetings and traditions workshops is an opportunity for us to understand what they are and why they're in place. Now, I was not crazy interested in traditions at first, but I love Tradition 3 because in the long form it allows for fallen women, and that got my attention. I was like, they've got a rule that says I can be here. Not just this desire to stop drinking, right? But for fallen women. And that's what I felt like, a fallen woman. So that got me interested, right? Because now the traditions aren't about old guys in AA, they're about me. They're about my right to be here, my ability to function and operate within Alcoholics Anonymous. I am protected here by our traditions, because my ego says, unless it affects me, I'm not as concerned with it, right? But I was bought in. That was the hook. That third tradition that allowed for fallen women, that piqued my interest, and that got me to look in further, right? So when I look through our traditions, and there's a long form and there's a short form, and if you're new to traditions, we have tradition pamphlets that World Service puts out, and I got my first introduction to traditions in the back of the 12 and 12, because that was just the information we were using. The reason I think they're so important today is for a comprehensive understanding. And I know when we hear our steps, when we read our literature, it's easy to see the mystical, magical hand of spirit, right, that has worked to put all this together. But it exists in our traditions too, and we can't lose sight of that, because that's what holds the group together. That's what keeps us from being divided within ourselves. When I see discord or opinions or outside issues in Alcoholics Anonymous, and people, well-meaning people who maybe just aren't aware, right? The ego says, me, I want to be heard, me, and our traditions say us, us, us. And this idea in our traditions, when we vote, when we decide things, what we discuss in open discussion meetings, right? Our primary purpose, how we are protecting the sanctity, the sacred and holy ground of Alcoholics Anonymous, where we have found refuge. And now it's our responsibility to keep that safe. So it's our responsibility to learn about the traditions, what they mean and how they're implied. And it's hard, right? We're nonconformist. We're anti-establishment. We're ego-driven. You tell a bunch of alcoholics, and I get, if somebody says, hey, this is a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, we'd like to keep the discussion on alcohol and alcoholism, but I want to talk about whatever I want to talk about. My ego's like, how dare they say that to me, right? But when I understand what I'm protecting and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, now I'm more apt to follow suit. So I'll tell this quick story about traditions and why they're important to me. I was dying of alcoholism, and I was coming in and out of AA from 2007 to 2010, trying to get my footing and get a sobriety date. And a friend had picked me up one morning and taken me to a 10:30 morning meeting out in the east end of Louisville, kind of a higher end area, right? So I feel out of place. I'm a homeless person. I live on the streets. You look better than me. I don't belong here. The ego dividing and separating me from you, because that's what it tries to do. And I'm sitting in that meeting. It was a discussion meeting, and a lady raised her hand while she was knitting. She was kind of there because she was knitting and talking. And she said that her problem was that she had 2 houses, and she wasn't sure which one to decorate this Christmas. I'm dying of alcoholism. Tears filled my eyes, and I thought, I'm gonna die. They can't help me. They can't help me. When we're in our meetings, when we're operating as members of Alcoholics Anonymous, we are here to carry a message and save a life, our own and the next guy's. What are we talking about in discussion meetings? We need to be talking about alcohol and alcoholism. Now, I'm a criminal, so my next thought was, can I have the address of those 2 houses? You're obviously not in one of them. Years ago, I will tell you, in AA in Louisville, newcomers weren't allowed at discussion meetings without their sponsors. You weren't allowed to go. You went to speaker meetings. That's where you could go without unattended. And my first time when I was in AA back in '95, I remember being about 8 months sober, and I wanted to go to one of these discussion meetings. We see more and more discussion meetings and less speaker meetings. And I wanted to go to one, and I asked my sponsor, can I go to a discussion meeting? And she reluctantly agreed to take me to one. And we went to a discussion meeting, and the lady was sharing on a recent relapse. And there was no timer, and there was no chairperson, and she went into great detail about how she had decided to make perfume. A lot of ingredients, events, days, boring, wah, wah, wah. I drank. That was the end, right? So we get in the car, and my sponsor says, so what did you learn? I said, don't make perfume. She said, right. She said, at a speaker meeting, you're going to listen to one asshole for an hour. At a discussion meeting, you could hear from 17, and you're easily confused. So what are we doing? Are we protecting this as we grow and we develop into these discussion meetings and these opportunities, and we have new people coming in? Who's at the helm? Who's at the helm? What is my responsibility as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous? What is my responsibility when I'm chairing a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous? And as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, am I open to suggestion or redirection or correction? So if somebody has to say to me, hey, Amy, we're going to talk about alcohol and alcoholism, or hey, Amy, don't post that on social media, or hey, Amy, there's no place for that here. Am I willing to accept that direction, or do I, square off? Does my ego square off? How dare they talk to me? When we talk about unity, and that's so hard for the alcoholic, right? Because it means the good of the whole instead of what little Amy wants. But when I can think of the whole instead of what little Amy wants, I'm practicing humility. I'm practicing sacrifice and preserving the sanctity. Because if my children or grandchildren walk into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's important to me that you're talking about alcohol and alcoholism so they know they're in the right place and they know they can get help for that here. So it's kind of a big deal to me that we do that, and that we have the courage and the fortitude to protect the sanctity of who and what we are and how we operate. We can look back historically at the Oxford groups and in AA history at the places that had good ideas and good intention, and they fall apart and they fall to the wayside. Our traditions have held us together for nearly 90 years. They are what will continue to hold us together. But if we do not educate ourselves about them and learn how to practice them, right? This is a word of mouth operation, right? We're storytellers, and we pass down information. And if you're here and you have that information, share it with the new man walking. Don't assume they know. Why would I know? Why would I know something I was never taught? Why would I understand something you've never explained, right? So I love that when I got sober, the old timers took the responsibility to say, no, Amy, you're going to learn traditions. You're going to get at this traditions meeting. We're going to respect the traditions. This is why we do. And they corrected me, and that I was willing to be corrected when needed, for those things. So it's our responsibility, if you want this here, for the next man or woman or your child or your grandchild or your neighbor or your loved one to come in. We want to make sure that they are finding Alcoholics Anonymous in its unity with one primary purpose, and this one thing we do really, really well. Real quick, I will say too, on unity, I see a lot of sponsors, first you get sober and then they tell you sponsor women. Well, I don't know how to do that, right? My ego says, I got to help this man or woman. And I will become a banker. I will become a chauffeur. I'll pretend to be a therapist. I don't have a degree in that, but I'm sure I can be helpful, right? I'll become the arbiter of your sex inventory, right? Because the ego says, help this person. And so the intention is good. But the ego must be curbed, and we have to look at traditions, and we have to follow directions in our literature. And it says, I'm not qualified to be those things in your life. And if I pretend to be those things in your life, I am doing me a disservice, and I am doing you a disservice. So with my sponsees, if they wanted advice on money or business or love or whatever, I say, oh, that's funny. See, I'm a one-trick pony. I got this one thing I'm pretty good at, and it's treating your alcoholism. But I believe that if we treat your spiritual malady, everything else will work itself out. So in sponsorship, am I doing my job? We do, GSR, our World Service does have a pamphlet on what is sponsorship. I love our pamphlets. If it's not mentioned in the book and you want to know something, there's probably a pamphlet. But it really kind of breaks down, and especially when you're new and sponsoring, that's why the sticking close to old timers, finding people that have been doing this a long time, not trying to wing it or make it up yourself or think that, oh, I'm sober 3 years, what's more to learn? I know what I'm doing, right? Don't let the ego tell you that. I'm sober 14 years and I still call my sponsor and say, what do I do about this? What do I do about that? Or I call Renee, I call Diane, or I say, what do I do about this? What do I do about that? Because if it's a situation I've never been in, I can rely on the wisdom and the experience of older members so that I'm not running the show, right? Because I will try to run the show. I'm the actor who will try to run the show. I'm described in that book, and that doesn't go away when I get sober. That's why I 12 stomped women for so many years. I'm running the show, and I'm dangerously armed with a little bit of information, right? And so that the practice of humility and service as it's designed, it's not Amy's program, it's a program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I'm doing that, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's my only title. And I got to kind of leave Amy at the door and be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And our traditions beautifully outline how I'm supposed to do that, my responsibility, and my role in that. So that's all I've got on that.
Now I'll go.
Okay.
I'm Kevin. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date's June the 18th, 2006. My home group is Jay Walker's group in Montford, Alabama. We meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays, all book studies. And so if you're ever in the little town of Montford, feel free to stop in and see us at 7 Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're Central Time. Amy said something that struck out to me. When you get 3 years and you think you know this and know that, and there's nothing else to learn. I was 3 years sober before I ever got into the book. Because of the things that you just talked about. I would show up in the meetings of alcohol, and I know we're talking about unity, and I'm going to get there, I promise you. But I would show up in the meetings, and I'd hear these things about meeting makers make it. So in my mind, in my alcoholic mind, I thought I just needed to go to meetings. Until just going to meetings wasn't enough. And it wasn't whether or not I was going to drink, it was whether or not I was going to live.
Yeah.
God, what a beautiful life I have. I'm so glad that I'm here. It's so amazing to be here in Lebanon, Tennessee on a beautiful Saturday morning with you people. There's 100 other things I'm sure I could be doing, but there's nowhere else I'd rather be. I'm so grateful for this life and the life that it's been given me simply as a result of the 36 principles that we're here to talk about today. And we're going to talk a little bit about unity, the 12 traditions, and what that means. And in the book it talks about we apply these principles in all of our affairs. Well, when I was going through the steps at 3.5 years sober, I thought it was just talking about the principles from the 12 steps. See, I've got one of these sponsors that's he was a past delegate, panel 55. He's big in service work. He's in the service manual. He's in the 12 traditions. So when you get taken through the program with him, you get taken through the program. And the service manual, if you've never read it, let me just let you know right now, it is the most boring book you will ever read. But when I read the big book, it was boring because I couldn't see myself in those pages until I understood what it meant to be alcoholic. When Dr. Silkworth described it perfectly when he says we become restless, irritable, and discontent. And then I'm going to take a drink because I need you to back up 10 feet so I can breathe. And then I'm going to have this phenomenon of craving, and I'm going to drink till something or someone stops me. I understood. That's me. This book was written about me and for me. And it's the same way with the concepts, and it's the same way with the traditions. And when I'm able to find myself in any of those, just like, and I'll talk about this in the steps, so I'm not going to talk about it now. Let me just stick to unity. So what is this? What is this thing? And I love tradition 1. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon what? AA unity. And if we're not unified, then there's a good chance that I'm not sitting here today, and neither are any of us. And how does that happen? How do you even apply these things? How does personal recovery and unity, all of these things apply at my own home? You know, when I think about the steps, I think about the traditions. The traditions are to the group what the steps are to the individual. And I think, you know, and I love that tradition 1 points that out from the jump. That I understand that it's about what, you know, I can't expect you to do it if I'm not willing to do it. What kind of AA do we want? You know, these are questions that I really have to ask myself. And understand also that there's going to be a lot of things, if you've ever sat in a business meeting at your own home group, there's going to be things that just don't go your way. More often than not, and I wasn't this way in the beginning because I didn't like confrontation early on. I'd look around the room when they'd take a vote, and whoever raised the most hands, that's the way I was going to vote. I just thought that was the way to go. And the more and more I got into these, and the more I understood, and especially in the concepts in the service manual, where Bill talks about the minority voice and how important it is, and how even more important it is to be open-minded and listen to those minorities or the minority voice, and to see where they may be right. I had an experience with this as a delegate. I was on a panel 69 delegate from Alabama, Northwest Florida. I served with, from Area 64 at the time was John, and then Shane. I served with my second year. It was his first year, COVID year, he's panel 70. But I had an experience at the 69th conference, and it was this agenda item that was really, really, I felt was a violation of our 7th tradition. And I let them know about it. I let the board know about it. I let the general manager know about it. I let the chair know about it. I let the room full of the conference delegates and trustees know about it multiple times, over and over and over again, because I've never met a Mike I don't love. It's just, you only get 2 minutes. Jimmy can tell you this. So you only get 2 minutes, and then they got these lights up there, green, yellow, red. When you get to yellow, I think you go like 10 seconds, something like that. When you get to red, they'll let you. I watched people, and I realized once you get to red, you really got about 5 or 6 more seconds before they kill that mic. So you really had about 2 minutes and 10 seconds ish. So I was talking really fast, which is tough for someone from Alabama to get up there and talk really fast. And to them, they probably thought, this is the slowest talking guy I've ever heard, because they're from New York, right? Or not everyone, but I'm up there, and I'm hitting home this point. Not just me. There was about 27 of us delegates that were in the minority. Well, when the 2 minutes goes out, when my mic got turned off the first time, because once the red light came on, that's not the sign to stop to me. The sign to stop was when the mic got turned off. So when the mic got turned off, well, there was 3 mics. Was it still 3 mics, Jimmy? 3 mics. There was 3 mics set up. If I was in this mic, I would go get in the back of the line in the middle mic. And now if there's still people that haven't gone yet, the chair will make you wait. So I did. I'd sit there and I'd wait. Anyway, my point is that I was so caught up that you all were wrong, and that my voice needed to be the loudest one in the room, and it needed to be heard more than anyone else. And therefore, I was going to go to that mic and have it turned off on me as many times as they were willing to let me. And then it got to a point where the chair said, listen, we want to hear what you have to say. Come see me after this. Let's talk about some of these things. But either way, the motion passed. I was against it, and so were 25, 27 of us, and it was really hard for me. I knew that we had screwed up. Deep down in my heart, I knew that we had messed up in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I went to the bathroom and I washed my face off, and I was ready to check out. I was ready to leave the conference. I was ready to come home. I was really in a spot where I just did not want to be there. And when I washed my face off and I looked up in that mirror, it hit me like a ton of bricks that the real problem that I had was my inability to accept the group conscience of the entire fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And who was I? One person in that room out of every area in the United States and Canada was represented by their delegates, the trustees, the board. Out of 136, 37 votes? 35? Out of 135 votes, there was 27 of us that were against it. And who was I to say that they were all wrong? Who was I to say that the entire fellowship was wrong? And when that happened, then it was easy to see where then it became this instant gratification. It became this humbleness when I realized that it's a lot bigger than just what I wanted. Right? It took me right back to my home group. And I had that same feeling when they went from smoking meetings to non-smoking. I was ready to check out and never come back. It was the same experience at the General Service Conference as a delegate. And that hit me so hard in the face. And I thought to myself, here you are, this person who takes such pride in following these traditions and applying them in your home and doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, and you can't even accept a group conscience. And then I realized, I took comfort, I found grace in that moment, and took comfort in the fact that that's how we got to these traditions. They were hammered out on the anvil of experience. People long before us really screwed up in Alcoholics Anonymous to have those traditions adopted in 1950 at the first General Service Conference. And then I looked around and I was at the place that happened. The exact same room. And then there was this willingness to make amends, and the chair allowed me to do so the next morning to the entire conference. It still didn't stop me from going to the mic. It still didn't stop me from voicing my minority opinion on other issues. But I was okay with how it turned out, no matter how it happened. That doesn't mean I was in favor of a lot of the things, but I found comfort in them. I was able to accept them. And it all started because of tradition one in my life. And how is this thing applied? And how is our common welfare? How does my survival at home depend upon my common welfare at home? And then I think about my wife, and I think about all of the things that's going on, and I had this real busy life outside of AA, and I'd come home from a long, hard day of AA out there slaying dragons and all of this, and I'd pull up and I'd walk into the house, and take my, stop at the door to take my shoes off, and she runs up to me and she says, "Listen, I got to tell you something." And I'd be like, already with the questions. Let me come in, let me get my shoes off, let me sit down, let me relax for a minute. I wasn't practicing unity in my own home. And then she'd be like, "Oh, okay, you're right, oh, you're fine." And then, there I am, I've done it again. I've hurt my wife. And so I started doing these parking lot prayers. I do them too at the meetings. You never see me pull up at a meeting and just get out. God, I know that there's somebody in that room today that's dying from alcoholism. I just pray that you would use me as a vessel to carry that message of hope that you have so graciously given me through the selflessness and the sacrifice of others who have come before me to love me enough to tell me the truth, and allow me to show my gratitude, my appreciation of some sort by doing the same thing when I walk through that door. Whatever I have going on, I know it'll be right here safely in your care in this parking lot for me to pick up when I come back out. I know that it has no business in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Please let me leave it here. And then I'll go to the meeting. I started doing it when I get home. God, I know there's a wife and a woman in that house that's been waiting to talk to me all day long about what I don't know. And I pray that whatever it is that I have going on that doesn't have anything to do with her and my love for her, that you let me leave it in this truck safely in your care for me to pick up when I come back tomorrow. Allow me to give her the time and the attention that she so desperately has been waiting for all day long, and even more importantly, that she deserves. And then I go in and I find my wife wherever she's at, and I give her a kiss and I say, honey, how was your day? And we talk. And you know what I discovered in this big sacrifice that I was making for unity? I was breaking my wife's heart for about 10 minutes. That's all she needed, 10 minutes. And then she'll go back to doing laundry or whatever it was she was doing. So when I see myself in the traditions, I'm able to apply myself. I'm able to apply those in all of our affairs. At work too, they apply there. No matter where I go, I'm so grateful to have this gift and to be able to do these things. And for people that's not even in Alcoholics Anonymous, that doesn't know you're in Alcoholics Anonymous, that says, I need this thing that you have. That's about all I got. Thank you.
I can see now y'all did that on purpose. Set me up. It's a hard act to follow. Hey everybody, my name's Jimmy. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Amy and Kevin, for making this hard for me. You know, as both of my colleagues here were sharing, I was struck and a bit amused at the realization of just how simple it really is, especially when it comes to my shortcomings and the way my defects of character continue to manifest themselves. You know, and they may be dressed up, you know, in different clothes, but throughout my sobriety and in every aspect of my life, when these things crop up, at the root, they're really similar to the same defects that I had when I came in here and was dying of alcoholism. They've just reared their little head in a little bit different way in some other area of my life. Again, I liken character defects to a game of whack-a-mole, a perpetual game of whack-a-mole that continues for my lifetime. It's just the heads don't pop up quite as frequently as they used to, or at least I hope so. Unity. I'm gonna focus primarily on the 12 traditions. I think that's what those are about. And I also don't think it's any mistake that our first tradition, you know, if we stack them up kind of one on top of the other, right? The steps, traditions, and the concepts. And in step 12, it tells us that we're supposed to practice these principles in all our affairs. And I'm like, man, I used to hear when I was young in sobriety that, you know, oh, I'm going to work those steps. And it was described or characterized as this kind of one and done thing. Oh, I'm going to work the steps. And then somehow I was going to finish that and be cured of alcoholism, and that'd be the end of that. They hook you. They hook you with that 12th step. That old practice these principles in all our affairs thing. It's like, oh, okay, this never ends. And thank God it doesn't. And maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I like to think there is a little bit of providential design in how all this shook out. I don't think it's any mistake that our first tradition says that our personal recovery, that thing, that spiritual awakening that we just had as a result of these steps, depends upon AA unity. Like, man, okay, this ain't all about me. You know, I learned a little bit about ego deflation going through those steps, right? I had to, or I was going to die of alcoholism. Now I got to learn how to be an adult, right? I got to learn how to play nice with all of you. And I'm an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. Like, that's my default setting. So me being able to be an adult and get along with you and to disagree with you without being disagreeable, that's like brand new territory. You know, that's uncharted waters for this guy. I don't know how to do that. You know, I don't know how to have a conversation with you about a difficult subject. And in the words, gosh, this one still gets me. I think about this often in the prayer of St. Francis, where he says, you know, let me seek to understand rather than be understood. Whew, that's a tall order. And to practice that consistently, when I do a 10-step in the evening and I just, I review my day, almost every day. Now, maybe not outwardly, maybe you didn't know it happened, but in between my ears, almost every day, there's a moment where I've failed to practice that. Where even in my thoughts, I've thought, I sure wish you understood me right now. That was top of mind. It wasn't, let me seek to understand where you're coming from. That's not the first thing that pops into my mind. So, in my journey in Alcoholics Anonymous and in my first, invitation to learn about the traditions, my sponsor told me, the first thing he said was, your ego is going to kill you if you don't do something different. So I'm resentful at my sponsor. Put his name in column 1. And then, he proceeded to tell me that if he was going to sponsor me, that I was going to get a commitment, that I was going to have to learn how to give of myself without thought of reward so that others might be helped. So, and I think probably the first job I had was something like coffee maker or table wiper downer at the end of the meeting or ashtray cleaner, or it was something like that, And then I got to help out on an event committee for our Founders Day picnic, local Founders Day picnic we had in Chattanooga. And so I got to start learning a little bit about what it was like to just be another person, another member of Alcoholics Anonymous, participating, lending a hand, and trying to help keep the door open and a seat available for the next, stumbling drunk that came through the door. So then I start getting a little bit more involved into this service business, and I start learning that, okay, so these traditions are what helped me learn what it looks like for me to be an adult as a member of our entire fellowship. What's it look like to really get along with people? So I'm going to a business meeting for my home group, right? That was another, requisite with him. You got to get a home group. You got to have a commitment. So I got a home group, and I go to this business meeting, and I'm listening. And much like what has already been shared, I'm hearing these conversations going on, and I'm sure this is a big surprise to everybody here. I had an opinion about how I thought everything ought to go. And it was different from some other opinions in the room, and because I was the new guy, all these other opinions spoke with a certain air of authority that I did not yet possess. And so, as this plays out, and I find myself in the minority, and as I've grown in Alcoholics Anonymous, and now sitting where I'm at today, I'm still in spiritual kindergarten, y'all. I'm still a baby in this thing. I got sober January 27th, 2012. I was a slow learner. It took me more than once. But as I sit here today with you, and I look back on my experiences with a loving God as he expresses himself in our group conscience, I can see many times in our past where, for instance, initially when I went to start reading our literature like AA Comes of Age and Language of the Heart and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions books to try to learn more about our traditions, I would love to sit here and tell you that I went to those resources out of a genuine desire to learn. That ain't how it happened. I had sat in business meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and listened to people who'd been around longer than me that spoke with authority about what their traditions meant and how they applied to a particular situation, and my spidey senses were sounding the alarm, and I knew something was wrong, and I was going to learn about this stuff so that I could weaponize it against my foes. Yeah, that was my motive originally. Now, I'd have never told you that then, of course, because I was a student of our traditions. But that's what was happening. But, and God is good. in my experience. As I got into that literature and I started reading about our history, and as Kevin mentioned, hammered out on the anvils of experience, that expression's in that book, AA Comes of Age, and I started to fall in love more with Alcoholics Anonymous and more with these traditions. And I started to understand underneath it all why we even have them and what that meant. So many times I'd sat in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, business meetings where we're, hopefully the tradition should apply. And I hear well-meaning members talk about, oh, well, we're going to hold an event that we're going to call an AA event. We're going to put our group's name on it, but we're going to accept money from local businesses to support our event. And it's like, well, wait a minute, hold on just a second. That doesn't sound consistent with our seventh tradition, right? Why is that? Would I have understood how to even begin to articulate why that's not a good idea if I hadn't gone to our literature and learned a little bit more about our history and how that seventh tradition came to be and why we think it's a good idea? On the surface, our intentions were so good. Who doesn't want the support of the local community for Alcoholics Anonymous? Our only reason for existence is to help drunks. There's lots of drunks in local businesses, right? They're all over the place. Like, who wouldn't want to join hands with our local businesses and collaborate with one another to help save more drunks? That sounds great, doesn't it? We can do that without affiliating with them, and it's really hard to trade dollars without affiliation. And so that's another one of them. So all of this stuff just kind of evolved over time, as my experience grew, my understanding began to grow a little more, and I began to see exactly why we have these things. With unity being the foundation, none of the rest of those traditions matter if we don't have unity. We have to be able to figure out how to come together, especially in this day and age. Like we all know, and we can all agree, I believe, that outside politics has no place in Alcoholics Anonymous. AA is a microcosm of the society around us. We're human beings, It's almost naive to think that some of our own personal ideologies don't influence the way we view the world and things in Alcoholics Anonymous, even though this is the only place that I know of on earth where we come as close as we ever will as the human race of being able to leave that stuff at the door and to come in here and sit down and say, you know what, I'm here because AA saved my life, and I mean to try to pass that message of hope on to the next person that walks through that door that's struggling with alcoholism. And I get cold chills just thinking about all this stuff. So, but it still happens, and it's tough. It's tough to talk about. I look at a lot of the, outside influences that kind of make their way in here a little bit, or they're poking at us, and Amy mentioned to start with the long form of Tradition 3. And what does that say? Is that not the most inclusive statement that there is? What other organization can you join, say, I'm a member because I said so, right? And furthermore, you can't kick me out. You have no power to revoke my membership card. None of you, individually or collectively. I'm a member if I say so. But it's really important, and my colleagues shared it very eloquently, that our primary purpose is preserved. And we heard Bill say, shoemaker, stick to thy last. I had no idea what that meant. I really had to study on that one to understand, like, what does that mean? Stick to thy last? Did the heel fall off? What did it do? In that third tradition, it says our membership ought to include what? All who suffer from alcoholism. It doesn't say anything about race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, profession, ad nauseum, whatever. Add to the end of that. It don't matter. We don't care. We shouldn't care. In reality, has it played out that way always in our groups? Probably not. No. I was listening to a friend of mine who's doing a workshop here a little while back, and he was referring back to the 1953 General Service Conference when they were talking about, at that time, as you can imagine, segregation was still a thing, right? And he was reading to me from the final conference report in 1953. This is the General Service Conference of Alcoholics Anonymous, right, where the decisions are made that affect Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole in the United States and Canada and around the world in some respects. And in that final report are delegates, area delegates, getting up there and saying things like, well, I don't think there are any black folks that are alcoholics. That's printed. They said that in 1953. That's how ignorant we as people can be sometimes. And that same kind of stuff in lots of different other aspects has crept its way into our rooms. Otherwise, if it was, again, AA is a microcosm of the society around us. And if there weren't issues going on outside, it's kind of crazy to think that somehow those things don't come in and create some problems for us in the rooms too. You know, to some extent. Hopefully it's not as bad as it is out there, but it's silly to think that it don't come in here at all. And so that's one of the things that just I keep coming back to. And like, what's our purpose? It seems so simple, so simplistic. Our primary purpose is to help alcoholics. That's it, period, full stop. That's all we're here for. No other reason for existence. Now, if you come in and misbehave at my home group and you exhibit aggressive or predatory behavior or something like that, we will ask you to leave. And if that behavior persists, we'll ask you to leave and not come back. And if we have to, we'd call the authorities if things got really, really out of hand. Does that mean you're not a member of Alcoholics Anonymous anymore? Nope. Nope, it doesn't. The worst of the worst can still say, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we can't revoke their membership card. We can say that our common welfare comes first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. And the unity in my home group, and my group, right, what's Tradition 5 say? Primary purpose, every AA group is to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. What's the message of your group? What kind of environment are you creating in your group so that when a new drunk walks through the door, they know they're going to be welcomed and they can find an inviting seat to put their hiney in to hopefully hear the message of hope from us. That's our responsibility. In our home groups, that's our responsibility. Nothing else matters. You know, when our group's sitting in a business meeting and we're making decisions about that event I told you about and we're going to accept money from local businesses, does that affect just my group or does that affect all the groups around me? Does that affect AA as a whole potentially? At least locally around me. Does that jeopardize the public's perception of Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole? Does it potentially compromise the integrity of our organization, at least in that local community, because we've allowed our principles to be compromised in that way? I think so. I think it can. And so that's just another reason and another example of why our traditions are so important and why it's so important for us. I struggle with this, y'all. How do I communicate in a tactful, diplomatic, and respectful way every time I want to try to address a challenging topic, you know? And these can get that way, right? Some of you, anybody ever been in a business meeting and had a disagreement with somebody in the middle of a debate? No? You know what? I'm so glad I came here. I knew I was coming to get fed by a room full of spiritual giants that have never had that experience. Of course we have. And I've been one of those that's had to go back and make amends, like Kevin was talking about over here, like, you know, after the fact, you know, after I've already stepped all the way in it, you know, and then I got to go to the bathroom. And thank goodness, thank God I had a program of recovery. I had a sponsor that had walked me through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and gave me the opportunity to have that spiritual awakening as a result of those steps. Because had it not been for having that foundation, who knows how I would come away from an experience like that, a negative interaction with another human being, and what I do after that. I know what I used to do before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I could tell you a million ways about how you were wrong in that. I'm an expert, still an expert, truth be told, at taking your inventory. But I didn't know how to take my inventory. You know what I mean? But through Alcoholics Anonymous, it's like, ooh, man, it hurts in the moment. Like I know it almost immediately, or as it's happening. It's you ever had that experience? It's unfolding before your very eyes. Your mouth is open and the words are coming out. You hear the words coming out, and you know in your mind, oh, I shouldn't have said that. That was not good. I wish I could take that back, but they're already gone. Yeah, but then we get to make amends. Then we get to circle back. Say, you know what? Those 3 words. Oh, come on, help me. I was wrong. How simple, how easy, right? Simple but not easy. Maybe that's a better way to say it. Simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. I was wrong. So, because I don't like doing that, right? And I'm one of those that learns best by experience. I've learned the best and longest standing lessons that have led to changes in behavior, right? More permanent changes in behavior that have kind of now helped guide how I communicate with and relate myself to other people. I don't like making amends, y'all. And I've also learned by changing the way that I talk and trying to remember, look, respectful, tactful, and diplomatic. Understand. Seek to understand rather than insisting upon being understood. If those are the kind of thoughts that are going with me constantly, then I don't make quite as many messes as I used to. And I've found that the audience is way more receptive to your message when you're not trying to beat them over the head with it. It's kind of difficult to hear when I'm getting whacked over the head. You know what I mean? I'm not hearing what you're saying because of the way you're delivering it. So I think I'm probably getting close to time, aren't I? 8 minutes left? Really? Oh, wow. That seems like an eternity. Okay. All right, I'll keep talking. No. Okay. I'm politely being told I need to be quiet now. Thank you, sir. No, I will wrap it up. Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. So we got a few minutes left, and Amy has had a wonderful idea. Maybe we could open up for some questions. Is that okay? Okay. Yeah. Thank you all for listening to me ramble. Do y'all want to answer that? You want it?
No, I mean. Yeah. So he wants to know: does it violate the traditions to pre-plan or manipulate, try to? Okay. Excuse me. I knew what you said, by the way. Discuss ahead of time a motion that you know is coming up next month or the next group conscience. I can't. So, personally, I don't think it really violates the tradition. Ethically, morally, probably for me, working the program and understanding that what we're looking for in the group conscience is not really me. But God's voice to be heard through the group, right? It's kind of like the experience that I had at the conference, but I didn't have the opportunity to talk to those other people a year before or a month before. If I would have, I'm sure I would have probably tried to do the same thing and been politicking or whatever you want to call it. I can't think of right off the top of my head that it violates a tradition, which is what the question was. But I don't do it. When we table our motions for the next month, I spend that next month talking to God about it, because a lot of times I get a different perspective within that month, and then I'm more prepared to go back to the group, and when my time is where my time comes to make those points is in the minority voice if I'm a minority. And oftentimes you've been able to do that if you're well informed and you've been seeking God's will through that, or I've been seeking God's will through that. I'm ready to back up my minority voice with why I feel it's right or wrong. And often I've been in part of group consciousness where it's done the complete opposite, and everyone in the group changed the vote. And there's been other times it stuck. I got the finger. But it's okay.
I think for me, I don't know, like Kevin, that I could point to specifically violating a tradition. That's one of those things where Bill talked about in the concepts about within our traditions, there's gray areas, right? It's not black and white all the way through, right? So there's gray areas, and there's typically those are the things that locally and within your group, you got to decide what that means to your group. For me, I think the difference is my motive and what my intent in those conversations is. If I'm having that conversation and what I expect to get out of it is to grease the skids before the business meeting, so that I can walk in there knowing I've got X number of votes in favor of my proposal, that makes me feel a little icky. If I'm having conversations about an agenda item that I know my group is going to be talking about at our next business meeting, and regardless of the person that I'm having, and if I'm really being true to myself, I'm having conversations with people whom I know probably already agree with it, and people that have a different viewpoint. And if I'm having those conversations and I'm carrying some St. Francis with me and I'm seeking to understand where the other person's at with it all so that I can go into the business meeting and participate in as well-informed a conversation about that item as I can, that's different to me.
Thank you. You had one? Come.
Gentleman back there.
You had one?
Question.
So the question is, if you're doing a group inventory, a group conscience inventory, home groups often do this annually, every 5 years, every 10 years, but it's applying steps and traditions to the inventory of the group. What is our message? Are we carrying it? How are we conducting ourselves? So it's spot checking for home groups. I've only been in one of those with my home group, and we utilized someone from the district who had done that, who was experienced in it, and they came in and led our home group in that. So that's the only experience I had with it. It was a positive experience. We had a lot of fun and we grew a lot, but we didn't inventory ourselves. Like, we brought someone who was not a home group member who has experience with that kind of work to kind of guide us through it. These guys might have more experience with that.
No, you answered it perfectly. It's typically done by someone who's not a member of that group. Um, Being someone who's I probably facilitate 5 times. I'm asked to speak a lot. I'm asked to do workshops a lot, but I probably do 5 times or facilitate 5 times the amount of group inventories a year as I do those other things combined. I did one last weekend. As a matter of fact, we were talking about this last night. And but yeah, it's typically done by someone that's not a member of your home group. It can be outside district. It can be outside the area. I went and did Georgia's Area 16. They did an area inventory latter part of last year. So it just really depends. But it's like if I went to sit down and did a 4th step and a 5th step by myself. Yeah. Right? You want the group to get a consciousness outside of your own. That's why when I go through a 4th step or 5th, 4th, and 5th, I'm doing that. And I'm telling my sponsor, telling someone my whole life story. It's the same thing with the group. So I hope that answered your question.